Furina De Fontaine's Guide to Landing the Hottest Woman in Teyvat. Written by Field Flare. Read by Rashi. Furina's legs were shaking, but can you blame her? She had somehow convinced herself to listen to the ridiculous plan born as a result of the traveler, Paimon, and Navia's single brain cell. Clorand, the ever-sensible one, refused to endorse the stupid idea these three had cooked up. What was the idea, you ask? Well, Furina had the most confusing, most down-bad, largest crush on the woman that threatened her life not even a few months ago. Yeah, she was just as confused as anyone else. But then, she'd like any other lesbian to take one look at that strong, handsome woman outside her work, talking so gently but firmly to her children, and not fall in love then and there. But that aside, right now, Furina was in the stupidest situation she had allowed herself to be in the past 500 years, and her heart was racing like it was running a marathon, and every instinct in her body was telling her to flee. But she squashed it all down and took a step forward. Arlecchino was right in front of her, back facing her, contemplating something, while she watched the children of the hearth play on the streets. Well, she has walked all this way to the knave's orphanage. She can't simply leave now. Furina cleared her throat. Hey, girl! This was such a stupid fucking idea. Why was she doing this? Oh my God! Arlecchino pointedly turned around, visibly surprised to see Furina, but not a trace of hostility on her face. Lady Furina, she greeted politely. Are you talking to me? What? Furina giggled nervously, trying to lean coolly on the lamppost nearby, but miscalculating the proximity of it, and instead just placing her hand on empty air and nearly stumbling onto the street into the way of an oncoming pedestrian. She caught herself at the last moment and managed to straighten up and grin, pretending like her face wasn't burning in embarrassment, while Arlecchino continued to look at her with something akin to amusement in her gaze. So, I was saying? Furina began again. Hey, girl, she said, ignoring all the screeching alarms in her head to not proceed. Are you Fontanian? 'Cause... She swallowed, before delivering the punchline that would seal her fate. Madame! She was going to do it. She was going to go back and strangle the traveler with a coat hanger for not only putting this stupid idea in her head, but also pushing her towards the direction of the hearth to act on it. Oh dear Archons, what has she done? The horror of the realization of what she had said was only further accentuated by the puzzlement on the knave's face, who blinked at Furina, eyes furrowed and face twisted into befuddlement. Pardon? She said, and Furina, barely holding back tears, wished that the ground could open up and swallow her right then and there. Maybe a prayer to the Geo-Archon. Oh, wait, but he was retired. Well, there was certainly nothing left to do now. I'm sorry! Please forget I said anything! She screamed with closed eyes, before turning around and running down the streets, hoping against hope that Arlecchino, at least, did not see her pathetic, sobbing face while she nursed the ego she had butchered with her very own hands. Meanwhile, the knave, who watched Furina run away crying, could only stand in muted astonishment, wondering what in Celestia was the woman trying to tell her at all. Why would Furina ask that? She was indeed Fontanian. Lady Furina knew that. Her children knew that. Everyone knew that. In fact, Furina must have known from the moment she was born. So, why would the former Archon ask her such a question at all? Arlecchino simply couldn't wrap her head around it. And why did she not continue after saying Madame? But why would Lady Furina suddenly address her as Madame? No one has addressed her as such, ever. They always called her Lord Knave or Sir. Should she correct Lady Furina? But then, was she addressing her at all? Or someone else? To be fair, Furina didn't quite look like she was there to converse solely with Arlecchino. But why would she walk all the way to the House of the Hearth, if she wasn't? Every passing moment that the knave spent thinking about the earlier interaction made her thoughts grow more and more puzzled. What was Lady Furina trying to tell her? Was she in danger? Perhaps that was a code for help. Arlecchino's thoughts were promptly interrupted when the door to her study opened, and a voice spoke out. "May I come in, Father?" Arlecchino nodded absent-mindedly, gaze fixed on her spotless stack of papers she was yet to examine. Lynette, who had noticed her father to be in a rare state of reverie, spoke up. "Is something the matter, Father?" Arlecchino blinked, looking up at her child. Would Lynette perhaps have an idea? She decided that she might as well ask for Lynette's thoughts on the matter. A couple of minutes later, "She was flirting with you." Arlecchino stared at Lynette, like she had said the most unbelievable thing in Teyvat. She was. What? Arlecchino had patiently, a bit still in a state of befuddlement, explained her earlier interactions with Lady Furina to Lynette, who had listened without interrupting, finally saying the earlier sentence in the calmest voice ever once her father was done. "She was flirting with you," Lynette repeated. "It's a common pickup line." Lynette then proceeded to explain what pickup lines are, and what the specific one Furina had used with Arlecchino meant. "Oh," was all that Arlecchino had to say after hearing Lynette's explanation. Lynette waited. Arlecchino stood up. "Well," she said, "I suppose I have to make up to Lady Furina for my earlier ignorance, then." Lynette held back a smile. "Good luck, Father." It was evening. The skies were darkening. Furina wished they would darken sooner. She desperately wanted to be done with the day as soon as possible. After her earlier disaster of a flirting attempt, she had run sobbing down the street, bumping into her two dear friends Navia and Clorinde, and fortunately not that traitor of a companion traveler, whom she would be sure to strangle when she met them for their ridiculous idea. Tearfully, she told Navia and Clorinde that she had fucked up so bad she was going to kill herself. Navia had patted her reassuringly and told her, "Oh, don't be dramatic. It couldn't be that terrible." And then Furina told them what had happened, and the two women exchanged looks that screamed, "Yikes," proving Furina's point that it was, indeed, that terrible. "I am going to jump off the top of the upper epiclase!" Furina had cried. Navia, ever the reliable friend, had consoled her, saying, "No, I'm sure we can still fix this. Or if not, in a few months the knave will be gone and no one will remember this mishap. Worst case scenario, and she doesn't, you can just spend the rest of your life avoiding her, or simply admiring her from afar, knowing you will never truly be able to act on your feelings, and realizing that suppressing them is the only choice left." Clorinde, speaking those words with a straight face, told Furina she wasn't joking at all, leading her to sob even more, and for Navia to elbow her girlfriend in the abdomen. "Why are you making things worse?" "That's what I was planning to do if things never worked out between us." Seriously?" Navia had then taken Furina to her favorite restaurant in the city, using the power of delicious desserts and marvelous Fontanian cooking to make Furina temporarily forget about her worries. Temporarily. The actress had bid her friends goodbye with a smile, like she was all happy again. But inside, she was dying with every replay of the memory of her most awesome fuck-up so far. Furina groaned when she remembered Arlecchino's face earlier that day. How did she fumble a bad bitch like that so amazingly? She supposed that she'd never know, for she was planning on holding herself up in her house for the next several months, until she got news that the woman she so wonderfully missed her mark on had finally left the country to return to Snezhnaya. And, As depressing as the thought was, at least it didn't make her want to bang her head against a brick wall. You know, the urge she has been feeling all day. Furina sighed, just a few meters away from her house, when she froze in shock. There, in front of her main door, was a familiar silhouette of a person. Holding her breath in disbelief, she took a step forward and, lo and behold, 'twas the knave Arlecchino. Furina had so many thoughts running through her mind. Why is she here? Was my earlier fuck-up so bad that she came here to personally reprimand me for it? Oh, my Archon! What if she's here to laugh at me? Or worse, ask me to stay the fuck away from her forever? Her brain very helpfully provided her a mental image of Arlecchino glaring and saying in her sexy, deep voice, "Lady Furina, if I ever see you around the house again, I will ask for a formal restraining order." Furina's outlandish and extraordinary thoughts were cut off when the very woman she was thinking about turned around and locked gazes with her. Oh dear, even as embarrassed as Furina was, she still couldn't help but admire how bold and beautiful the knave always looked. Truly, Teyvat's hottest daddy— "Not now!" she admonished her vulgar thoughts. "Not now!" "Lady Furina, good evening." Arlecchino greeted her in that deep, sultry voice that already had Furina blushing. "Knave!" Furina giggled nervously. "Hello! What brings you here?" she stammered, looking everywhere but into Arlecchino's eyes. Arlecchino cleared her throat and spoke. "About earlier today—" "Oh my God!" Furina interrupted her, not hiding the panic in her voice. I know that was absolutely pathetic of me. Forgive me. I don't know what I was thinking," she said in quick succession, stopping to catch her breath after her words. Arlecchino looked at her, slightly bemused. "Well, I accept." No, I am so sorry. Wait, what?" Furina's typhoon of thoughts came to a halt. She stared at Arlecchino. What?" she repeated, face blank with bewilderment. A slight smile graced Arlecchino's face, and the sight sent Furina's already pounding heart into another cycle of pretending to run an endless marathon. As she watched, Arlecchino went on. "Forgive me, for I am not too familiar with the concept of pick-up lines, so I couldn't quite grasp what you meant earlier." Furina swallowed. "Oh!" Arlecchino continued. "Indeed, I was so confused. Fortunately, one of my children explained to me the meaning behind your words. You were trying to court me, yes?" For a brief moment, Furina's brain went off on a tangent about how between the two of them she was the 500-year-old ancient soul, but Arlecchino always spoke like the spirit of centuries-old ghosts have possessed her. Shaking that irrelevant thought out of her mind, Furina, red-faced and unable to believe what was happening, replied, Yes, that was indeed what I was trying. Arlecchino's smile widened, and Furina wondered if those were butterflies floating in her stomach or a flock of restless birds. The fact that Arlecchino took a step forward and presented her with a bouquet. How had Furina not noticed that before? It was a lush bouquet, full of the most beautiful romaritime flowers. "Then I accept it," Arlecchino said. "I accept your courtship." Furina, brain still trying to catch up on what was happening, accepted the flowers and said, You do?" Her terrible flirting skills actually landed her the dilf of her dreams? What? Okay, maybe she wasn't going to strangle the traveler with a coat hanger after all. "I do," Arlecchino told her, reaching forward to take her hand in her own, leaning down to plant a kiss on the back of Furina's hand while she held her gaze without moving. "Do you?" she asked, lips brushing against Furina's skin. Oh, Lord! Oh, Celestia! Oh, Archons! What was happening? Is that really a question? Furina managed to choke out with an anxious giggle. Because what maiden would be foolish enough to say no? There we go. Her usual eloquence was back again. Arlecchino, pleased, straightened up, but did not let go of Furina's hand. Did you have dinner yet? No. Arlecchino smiled. Would you do me the honor of joining me for dinner, then? Furina, still blushing, mumbled, Are you asking me out on a date? I most certainly am, my dear. My dear. Furina's heart skipped a beat. She nodded enthusiastically. I would love to. Arlecchino hummed and looked around, as if searching for something. Furina, confused, asked her, Are you looking for something? Arlecchino moved closer to her. I seem to be lost, my dear, she said, and leaned down, her face so close to Furina that the latter's face warmed up ferociously at their proximity. Would you mind giving me the directions? Arlecchino asked, placing a finger underneath Furina's chin to tilt her face upwards, her voice low and full of desire when she continued, The directions to your heart. Furina, in real time, felt like she might pass out from how hot she was feeling at the moment. Her legs buckled, and she actually fell into Arlecchino's arms, who caught her securely, albeit with a bit of confusion. Lady Furina, she called out. You... Furina breathed out, clutching the bouquet in her hands tightly. Can dinner wait? I have things I want to do to you first. This time, it was Arlecchino who was visibly surprised, but not undeterred. She lifted Furina up into her arms and gave her a smile full of promise. Shall we head in, then? Furina, barely keeping it together, could only nod with a flushed face and pounding heart.